everyone. Thanks for coming. I know there are too many interesting things to do at Dreamforce. So let's talk about IoT and let's talk about smart cities. This is what a future looks like with cities full of sensors, helping us in finding a parking spot, saving water for irrigation, cities with sensors to be more livable, cost-effective, resilient, and a better place to live. Of course, we are not there yet, not there, but we have walked a long way. So let me show you what we have learned after 9 years of participating in IoT and smart cities projects. We at Libellium are a company that produces hardware sensor devices and also IoT gateways. So we take care of how to send any kind of sensor data to any kind of cloud platform using any communication protocol. So we are trying to solve that interoperability problem from a hardware perspective. The dream started, and let's say 6 years ago, all the mayors were flooded by lots of people telling them nice stories about how to make cities better, a better place to live, how to use technologies to reduce the energy bill, to improve the air quality in the city, and to save costs in all the departments. So with mayors very expecting, the first pilots started, and everyone crashed against the reality. So the first problems that companies were facing were the technical challenges. What means to go from lab to real? It means that, well, you need to find the best place to install your sensors. You need to see what happens when you are surrounded by traffic lights, trams, buildings, trees, pigeons, and all kinds of elements in a living city that make it difficult to install and also difficult to transmit. You need to interact with the existing furniture, and then you also need to deal with things like what happens when you make mobile things, like in this case. This is a picture from Serbia, from the city of Pansivo, where we were creating a mobile network. So it was challenging to put the devices on top of the buses and also to try to create a kind of real-time connection using GPRS. That was, after this project, we created a module, 3D module to make this kind of projects possible. But also, we have also the other challenges, like the day when we find an old lady, asking one of our engineers what were those black boxes intended for, and were they being funded by her taxes? What wasn't being done because the government decided to fund this project and not another one? Or like another day when we got one installation stopped by a man that said, you cannot install any sensor on the street light. Well, we have a permit. No, you don't, because I'm the street lighting manager of the city, and nobody has told me. And we were having a discussion with that guy for like 2 or 3 weeks, trying to convince him that those devices couldn't create a blackout in the city and couldn't damage the street lights. But the real conversation that we were having in parallel was a political one. It was not a technical thing. So the problem was that nobody had told that guy that we were doing that project, and it was his domain. So we were talking about horizontal technology, but we were not applying horizontal organization. So that was one interesting lesson. So suddenly, the mayors become a little bit frustrated because they started making a lot of questions and they were getting only few answers. So it was a kind of delusion problem, delusion moment. And don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about something in a bad way. I think that this is part of a natural and necessary education process. And in fact, I think that the biggest problem here was that it was a lack of expectation alignment between what the companies were willing to offer, where the mayors were wishing to receive, and where the technology was really ready to produce. So let's review the context of the first smart cities projects to understand better the situation. First of all, the goal for the first smart cities projects was to test let's admit that, immature technology. But they didn't know that, or maybe they didn't want to acknowledge that. So this is fine. It's fine to say we are making tests with new technology. That's absolutely necessary. But messages were often not aligned. So the problem is when you are doing something in a city, you are doing something so publicly that you cannot say, hey, we are just investing this amount of money just to see what it looks like. You can't do that. And you are exposed to all the citizens. Especially in the current economical crisis, you can understand the big pressure of the governments. So we were living in a moment that was led by the more sensors, the better. All the mayors were looking for the spectacular in terms of number. We are going to be installing 1,000 sensors, 20,000 sensors, 50,000 sensors. And the other problem was that because they were trying to allocate as much money in the number of units, they were not allocating anything in maintenance for the networks. So particularly in Europe, most of the projects were government funded, and that means that they were funded like research projects for 1 or 2 or 3 years, but they didn't have a continuity plan. And just to give you an example, an idea, every telecom project allocates between 15 to 20% of the total budget yearly for maintenance purposes. In the early smart cities projects, that was no maintenance budget at all for anything. So it shows that there was not a real continuity plan. And now I want to give you an example. I want to go deeper into what the more sensors, the better, really means. This is what the cities were asking for. But the problem is that description may be accurate, but not the price. That was not commoditized. So if you as a city are insisting in keeping both the description and also your target price, this is the only thing that you can get that fits in the description and also in the target price. And the sad part of this is that I've seen companies and startups going bankruptcy trying to offer high technology at the price of rubbish bins. That's the problem of things like that. But I'm talking today about Smart Cities 2.0 and about the transition. And one of the first signals of transition I saw was that 1 year ago, there was a tender in Spain with similar terms to the ones that you are seeing. And for the first time, absolutely nobody applied. So for the first time, the whole industry were sending a message, okay, we are not using anymore the marketing money to fund smart cities projects just to be able to say that we have done one. No, that's going to change. So after the first dark years of smart cities, I want to share with you all the lessons that we learned, because we have had the opportunity to be in many different projects. First of all, there's no time for commoditation. Not yet. It will, but not yet. And I like to say that the IoT is like the new railway age, and hardware is nothing but the tracks. So at this point, we are still building the tracks. We need to create infrastructure in our cities. And due to also the big amount of different technologies, different communication protocols emerging every year to try to be the technology, it's difficult to find commoditized hardware at this moment. Speaking of that, interoperability is also something key, because of many reasons. First, because a city needs different services, like gardens, control the water in irrigation, control the lighting, control the energy bill, optimize the waste collection routes, and you need to, and that translates into different sensors that you need to use. Second, because there's no the technology for the IoT. Some years ago, it looked like Zigbee was going to be definitely the ultimate technology for the IoT. And then some projects were using Wi-Fi. The operators tried to push with cellular technologies. And now we have long-range technologies like LoRa or Sigfox trying to become the de facto standard. And also, we have multiple IoT cloud platforms optimized for different kinds of problem solvings or different systems. So interoperability is something key. And that's why we, from a hardware vendor perspective, we try to connect any sensor to any cloud system with any communication protocol. And also, installation and maintenance matter. And sometimes it does even more than the proper services that you are offering. Something so simple like changing the sensors when they expire, in the case of gas sensors, for example, if you are measuring air quality, makes the project totally unviable if you cannot do that in an easy way. If you need to uninstall the devices, take them back to the factory, replace the sensor probes and install them again, not going to happen. So we designed the enclosure of our device, especially thinking of that, so you can replace a sensor probe as you are changing a light bulb, as easy as doing that. And we can reprogram the sensor devices by wirelessly using over-the-air programming. Because once you have an installation working, anything that you cannot do remotely is going to mean cost for the city. And that's one of the first questions that they are asking you right now. And finally, because of the process of education in municipalities, they are not going for quantity anymore, they are going for quality. And this is important because of two reasons. First, because municipalities have learned enough that they are understanding what they are using. They are understanding for the first time what are the real benefits they can get from smart cities. And now it's not anything goes. They say, is it going to be calibrated? What level of ppms or ppbs are you measuring with your gas sensors? And you know what? Are they asking these questions? Because of the second reason, because they are having a real horizontal conversation with the rest of the municipality. So they are sitting down with all their colleagues and saying, look, we have the opportunity to build a smart city. What's your wish list? So environmental people says, okay, well, I need something comparable to my environmental stations. So environmental stations are expensive, but so the city can only afford a couple of them. Not that we want to populate the city with sensors every single street light, because that makes no sense, but at least I want to have some more capillarity in terms comparable to the existing equipment that we have. And then it's the same with the noise department and the same with the lighting department. So this is a result of a cross-conversation, and it's a signal of maturity in the market. And after describing you all the problems and all the lessons learned, there's time to hope. We also have examples that are working and that are successful. So we have this example in the city of Hoboken in New Jersey, where we are doing a multiple service project. The main service is smart parking. We are bearing sensors on the streets to help drivers find a parking spot easily. But we are also taking advantage of the existing network to attach easily other sensors like CO2 sensors to monitor if we are really reducing the carbon footprint because of installing the smart parking sensors. This is a little bit different. It's a project to reduce cost, and both examples are from the same company. The first one, in the first row, we have an ultrasound sensor that is measuring the amount of trash inside containers. So you can call the truck only when you are full, and if the container is empty, you can skip that part. And the second one is a water meter. So here we are sending remotely the readings of a water meter, and this is part of a big project in Saudi Arabia, which is monitoring a lot of all these water pumps. Resilience, a new topic that we are hearing more in smart cities, the ability to recover from a disaster and the ability to do that quick. So this is a project in the northeast of Spain, where we are monitoring river levels and also detect early symptoms of forest fires. The idea is to create a system to alert citizens in rural areas that are usually not close, to make them know when they need to evacuate the city. And talking also about other uses of smart cities. This is a company based in the Netherlands, and they are monitoring smartphones with two purposes. First one is to monitor traffic congestion, and in order to give in real time advices to car drivers to try to avoid traffic jams downtown. So when they detect there's a very crowded route, they try to divert the traffic. And they are also using that with pedestrian in shopping centers or in historical places of the city. If they know the amount of people going to certain places, they can use that to know where to locate more services, where is the better place in a shopping mall to put a new cafe, or in in a big event where the health services should be allocated or things like that. And this is the case of the city of Barcelona. We have had a lot of conversations with them, and I think it's a big proof of the maturity signals of the market. This city has designed its own cloud platform to monitor all the city services because they decided that the cloud system was too strategic to rely on any third-party vendor. So they have done their own cloud platform, and they have made it open source, trying to spread it among other cities. And we are monitoring their air quality and noise levels. And they are a good example of what I was explaining about the importance of quality in the readings instead of the quantity of the nodes installed in a city. And last but not least, this is my favorite example, and it's from 2011, but I think it's as fresh and empowering as the first day. It happened after the day of the tsunami in Fukushima, when the nuclear accident happened. And, well, we, as a hardware company, what could we do here? So we tried to address the problem of monitoring and measuring the radiation levels in the surroundings of the nuclear plant by providing citizens with Geiger counters so that they could use them on their own. And we did it. So we create a prototype in just 3 weeks, and we sent some devices to Japan, to some hacker spaces, and were spread it into citizens. And that was all. So after 3 or 4 weeks, we discovered that in a totally autonomous and spontaneously way, the citizens were sending all the data to the same open data platform that you can see here, and they were keeping a real-time, government-independent monitoring platform of radiation, which is pretty cool, but it's also very empowering, as I was saying, because I think this example is also showcasing that the power of the citizens and in contributing to create a better city, a better place to live. The power of using open data formats so that everyone can benefit of that can be the best legacy of the IoT. And I'm a strong believer that IoT and open data in smart cities can mean more transparent and more democratic society. That's my very, very long-term vision. So now that I've told you this first wave of smart cities, all the problems, how did we solve them, and all the sunny moments that we are seeing, I think that I can say that smile, because even although we are not there, it's not going to be that far. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I know I'm going to open it up to the crowd for questions, but I just had one question for you. The power of data. You were in my session just a couple of hours ago. We talked about predictive way of doing things as opposed to reactive. You're seeing a lot of these sensors in the cities and multiple different areas. One was the empowerment of citizens, but what are you seeing from a business side? And I know you're working on a couple of projects where you're working with Zively as well in terms of how the data comes across onto a business platform. I know I'm doing a pitch for Salesforce, but that's not the main thing. It is, how are you seeing the business side of things? So there is a lot on the government side. What are you seeing on the business side?
Well, I think that that we have a lot, even if we keep the framework in smart cities, there are lots of opportunities when you open the data to citizens. So you have, for example, the initiative of New York City Big Apps, where they are saying, they are launching challenges to the citizens and saying, we have all those open data sets, and the city has all those problems. So try to find the way to address them, and by creating an app that is befitting by the data sets. And there's no condition for the app. You don't need to give it for free. You can sell the data. You can create a business model on top of that.
So you're talking about a totally different business model kind, parking as a service, light as a service.
Yeah, that's also because if the city is owning the infrastructure and opening the data sets, then suddenly you have a lot of, the city becomes a broker for the data, and you are opening to a competitive landscape of companies that can offer services on that. So if I'm the best one offering, if I have the best algorithm for helping you to find a parking spot, it will be my application. But it also keeps the system fresh and with a continuous competitive.
Yep. I'll open up to the floor. I've got another mic. If you can state your name and the question, and I'm sure Alicia would love to answer these questions.
So you never mentioned what, if anything, you're using Salesforce for?
I would have asked it, but then I'm Salesforce.
Well, our sensors are integrated somehow into Salesforce platform as well, because we are, I mentioned that we are integrated into some cloud platforms, which happen to be also integrated into Salesforce. So I think that we are in the closer to earth part of the value chain in the IoT, because we are hardware. And I think when you reach the Salesforce side, you are talking about more customer engagement, and you can talk about more citizen engagement in this context. So you can cross data not only with process optimization, but also with customer, or in this case, citizen satisfaction. And that's where I see Salesforce fitting in the system.
Just a quick question. What are some of the cities, based on your work or your understanding of what's going on in the United States and the type of policies that are being put in place, what are the top cities where you see these type of technologies being adopted in the US?
Well, California has been active, and you have San Francisco comes with a smart parking system that was change of the technology supplier. And I think that was also in the first wave of smart cities. So I think they were suffering the early problems of smart cities. LA is another city which is doing a lot in transportation as well. Chicago and DC, the big center cities, are also doing things more in the metering side. And I'm aware also that New York is also very aware of the air quality. So maybe I'm not saying anything new because I'm mentioning the biggest cities, but then you could also find small initiatives like across the whole country, I would say, and one of the main characteristics of the smart cities is that it's not happening in one single place. It's happening everywhere in a bigger or a smaller way.
Anybody else?
Hi, thank you for this lovely presentation. My question is, of all these different applications we see here, which of them do you think has the biggest potential for growth in the future?
I think that parking seems to be one of the killer applications, because you are solving all the problems. So when you go to a city wants to hear one of three things: quality of life improvement, savings, or an ecological impact. And with parking, you can do the three of them. You are fine improving the quality of life of citizens, reducing the carbon footprint, but you also are creating more efficient payment systems. So, and that's when you mix smart city service with a payment system, and you can make it more efficient, and you can save money there. Then you can build a business case, which is not exactly the case with air quality monitoring, for example. You are matching two of the three, but there's not a clear business case. Also, smart lighting, it's something that has a big potential, but I think it's going to take a little bit longer, because while in smart parking you can just install new sensors, even although you need to go through an aggressive process of installation in the city. In the case of smart lighting, you need to interact with legacy systems, and that's not that evident. So we have some initiatives from lighting companies that want to offer the connected street light, but then the municipalities are not really, are a little bit concerned of giving all that power on one lighting company, because the street lights are meant to be installed for at least 40 years in cities. So you need to ensure that your systems will be working for 40 years. And in the case of lighting companies, sometimes it's difficult for them to commit to that, to behave as an utility.
So I might add one more is, I've been working at Alicia for a while, and I've been doing a lot of IoT work across APAC. Some of the things that you come across is smart utilities. And where I'll answer the two questions, you said where Salesforce comes into this. Where Salesforce comes into this is you saw all these sensors that come in. One of the things was a simple example you had there was a water leakage. Imagine whether it's a water leakage or a gas leakage. The sensor beams up, and before something happens, it's already done a tweet, it's already done a case, and it's already assigned a field engineer to go and fix it. So you can definitely see some of the things that I'm talking about. If you go to the IoT campground, you will see a demo of the IoT cloud in terms of how these things happen. So yeah, smart utility is something you see. You see a lot of work happening on smart meters, and that's where I see some of the other work happening from a smart city perspective. I hope I answered your question, and from a Salesforce perspective, I answered yours.
Hi, I'm coming at this question as an engineer, a computer engineer in background, but also as a marketing guy who looks at business models. And I'm wondering if your experience shows you any new business models that are coming into light through the technologies and the chips and the sensors that are being deployed. And we could look at things like ride-sharing services that are out there because of the smartphone, because of the computing power in the background where you can dynamically route cars, and that springs forth a new business model. Yeah. So are you seeing any new business models?
Yes. And it's funny because we were talking about the same question this morning. So basically, I'm identifying two new big groups of business model. The first one is anything as a service. You have car insurance companies that are offering you a discounted prime, or a discounted prime, depending on the way that you are driving, and you need to install something in your car. Other model. What if you have a healthcare insurance and you are wearing a Fitbit or another kind of wearable? So if you have a healthy life, you do exercise, maybe you can get a discount because you are taking care of yourself. So and then you can imagine all kinds of combinations where, depending on the way that you are behaving, you can adapt the amount that you are paying for that service. That's one part. And the second one is, what if I'm using the IoT to engage more with my customers? Instead of looking at the more classical way, that could be the examples I've been giving, like process improvement, cost reduction, which is the normal IoT application, if we can call it that way. Thinking about a tool to keep customer loyalty. And I'm going to repeat the example because it works. So 4 years ago, we received a call from a company that they manufacture chemical pills for the maintenance of swimming pools. They didn't want to use our sensors to improve their factory processes. What they wanted to do was to install a water quality sensor in every single swimming pool of their customers, so that they could send a message via a smartphone app to the customer and say, hey, you should apply the treatment now. So the next thing is that, yes, you are offering a better customer experience to your customer, and maybe next time it's a decision-making factor for the customer to choose between your pills and someone else. But the second thing is, did you apply the treatment? Yes. Okay, so because I'm your supplier, I'm controlling your stock. So, hey, you're running out of this, so you will need to have more pills in 2 weeks. You want to order? Yes, click. So in that moment, you are not only improving the customer experience, but you are also raising your sales, because you are making it easier, the sales process. And if you think about that example, you will see that you can apply to many other different ways that you wouldn't think that they are a typical IoT customer, but in fact they are.
Hi. Very interesting, thank you. I'm just trying to understand the business landscape a little bit, I guess. Are you, as the hardware vendor, trying to sell directly to the cities? And I know you mentioned the mayors before. Do you always go after the mayor, or how do you get into like something like the city of San Francisco that's such a massive organization?
Well, particularly in our company, we never go directly. We always work with channel partners and especially with system integrators. So the end of the day, truth is that you find a little bit of everything, because cities work in a different way here in the US rather than they work in Europe, and because we have had this artificial landscape in Europe with lots of projects that were just granted. There were money to spend. So in those cases, companies were chasing municipalities and saying, hey, there is a grant opportunity, and I can help you to write all the paperwork to get the grant and to install the whole thing and to offer you the whole project. In other cases, it's usually always through tenders. In the early days, maybe you were trying to approach mayor by mayor, or doing that through not through the mayor, but through the IT. The IT department was usually the entry point, because that was at the beginning was the natural point of contact. Now the conversation is changing, and when you know that there are specific problems in certain sectors of the city, maybe you go directly to the traffic person or to the parks and garden person. But it's a really fragmented process, and not only between countries, but also between the same region in the same country.
And I might just add one thing, especially in these sort of situations where you've got the whole stack from device sensor manufacturer to the infrastructure guys, to the telco, to the fabric which brings the device to the cloud, to the Salesforces of the world. it's really a consortium of people who will work together. And that's where a lot of the work is about integration and about partnering. So when you say, I've got a solution, you can't just say, I've got a solution because it's one sensor. But I've got a solution, it's the whole chain of events that happen. And at the end, a service ticket is raised and a field engineer goes and fixes it. But that's happened because the sensors has pointed out a few things. So it is, a lot of the work that we have been doing is a lot of POC work, whether it's healthcare or whether it's smart city. It's showing the proof of concept and the art of the possible, and then we go ahead with that. I hope that answers the question. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Palash. One thing we did not touch upon at all, and wanted your take on that, that within this world of IoT, where is the debate on data privacy currently?
That's a good one. A very good one. Well, that could be material for another talk, which is not the case today. But in general, I think that my main position about the data privacy is that we live in a big hypocrisy world, and everyone is very aware, very concerned about my data, but then you are giving up everything. You are opening your Facebook at all levels if you can get $1 discount for a coffee. So we are selling very cheap our privacy, and I think that more important than privacy is data integrity in cities. I don't know. I think that governments need to legislate, and because it's something that it's so new that we don't have enough legislation, governments need to ensure that at least you are going to be prevented of what you are doing. And if you don't really want to share your data, you need to be able to be invisible. You should be able to do that. And that's government's task to ensure that. But in an overall smart city context, I don't really care about if temperature data is private or not. I think that's not the problem. We are not talking about medical data. I'm more aware about the accuracy of those data and the ability to transform those data into information. Because I was talking about transparency and about the way to make a more democratic society. So one of the risks that we can suffer with smart cities is that governments are opening everything without a context. So you feel that you live in a transparent society when what they are doing is making it very, very dark, so that you can understand what's going on. And I think that's the real debate, and what should be our biggest concern.
I think I've got time for one last question. Is that right? Yeah, we've got time. Any more questions? Oh, there you go. Right at the end. Had to be.
Yeah, this could be a bit of a weird question, but do you sense your sensors? Like, how do you know when they need to be checked? Do you sense your sensors? Like, how do you know if a sensor needs to be worked on? Because that's critical that it's actually functioning properly.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
Do you sense the sensors? So I will answer you from one side, and I know Alicia will. If you again go down to the IoT campground, you will see that we've got a connected HVAC system to the IoT cloud, and we've got parameters in there, and logic which says, hey, my temperature is going above 50 on a continuous basis, raise a ticket. So it does measure it, but it's basically about, do you measure your sensors to see whether they're failing or not?
We have different systems to do that. And one of the most important things is that we calibrate all the gas and ions sensors. So all the ones that need to be calibrated, they are. And then you have different we offer different tools so that you can check by yourself, because we are not managing the sensor data. So once we are shipping you the sensor devices, we don't connect to them anymore. So we don't have a control on them. But we are offering some ideas and some algorithms so that you can check if they are, if some of them are having misperforming.
Right. Alicia, thank you very much for this very interesting session. Thank you all.